Okay, good afternoon. Thanks everyone for joining. It's our usual, it's every 6 weeks that we do these webinars. So really good to see the number of people joining today. I'll just explain that we are recording. So you might see a little pop up here saying that we're recording it, and we will share the recording hopefully by the end of the week. The other thing is we've enabled chat and Q&A. So if you've got any questions, just try and ping them into there, and I'll have a go at answering them. Because we've got a lot of content to cover, I'm going to hand straight over to Anna Marika for this one.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming along and joining us for the updates. Now we have got a jam-packed session today. The last time we did our Copilot updates was at the end of last year, so there's been a lot of changes since then. I've tried to be selective in what we pull out, looking at, first of all, items that are live that you're able to use at the moment. There's a couple of exceptions. That's because they're important to know about. The other criteria was that they needed to be things that most people would find useful. There's a couple that will be specific to particular areas, but in the most part I've tried to pick the items that will be good and tasty, so to speak, for the majority of you. But there is so much to learn, and even as I was putting the material together for the session today, we had some new updates come through yesterday for one of the big ones I'll be talking through today. So even as I'm writing material, the material is changing. That is just the nature of the beast with Copilot. So do keep in touch with us so that you know what's going on and what the changes are, so we can keep you up to speed as well. But without any further ado, let's get started. So the first of the updates is one that came out a little while ago, which is the context IQ. So when we're typing in a prompt into our Copilot window, we can hit the / and it opens up this contextual area. It's called Context IQ. Most of you will be familiar with this. This is in the workspace, not the web space. I've added a few more items into the Context IQ, which is why I've put this one up on screen today. And the extra ones that we now have, actually, before I show you the extras, we'll just talk through for those who aren't familiar with this. We can use this window to surface people in our organisation. It could be files in your organisation, meetings. You can connect to emails so that the prompt is looking into the emails. And then under the More button, that's where these extra items are coming in. So Sites was added a little while ago. That allows us access to SharePoint sites. Other has been there for a little bit as well. That's if you've got any third-party tools that your Copilot can connect to. And the two new ones that have come in is that we can now connect with our chats and channels. So you can connect it to a specific channel for it to go in and look into that information. So that's a nice little change for us. The next is agent mode, which was also being called vibe coding. There's some updates in the space, and the first is that, yes, it's got another new name. It is now called Edit with Copilot. The way that we access it has also changed. So just as a reminder for those that may not have been here in our last update session, agent mode allows us to be able to do actions while we're inside Copilot in our specific Microsoft app. So we could be inside of Excel and ask it to actually do things in the spreadsheet rather than just asking questions. So they've changed the entry point now. It used to be that there was, if it was Word, a little blue button here. If it was Excel, a green button that would then turn on agent mode. It now is at the top of your prompt box, and by default, it will show allow editing. Now, allow editing is that old agent mode, not that old. It was only a month ago that it was called agent mode. And if you want it to just be chat-based, then we would change it by clicking in the drop-down box and choosing chat. Now, additionally, the Edit with Copilot has got a lot more powerful, and I'll show you an example shortly on how that looks. So these are a couple of the things that have changed inside of agent mode. And at the time when they brought this out, it was still being called agent mode, hence why the slides have got agent mode in them. So firstly, we can now access it in both the desktop and the web. So that's been there for a couple of months already. So some of you who are using agent mode are probably familiar with that. But now what we can do is that it can act as an active co-editor, making transparent multi-step edits in your document spreadsheets and PowerPoint presentations. Now it's grounded with your work information, which I'll come to in the third point. In Excel, it is now fully production ready for licensed users, and it's been that way for about a month now. It allows multi-step Excel workflows, so you can put a prompt inside of the inside of the prompt box, and it will show you it's working as it's going through the various steps. If there are multiple things that you want it to do, you can be putting that into the prompt as well. Now, the Work IQ context is that it is now this is specifically in the Excel space. So when you're editing using the Edit with Copilot, I have to pause to remember its name, it will look automatically to see what is the most relevant context for you from either your emails, meetings, chats, or files, depending on what your prompt is. And there's an example of that here on the right-hand side. So we've had a prompt go in, it's gone looking for the files that it thinks is relevant, and it's surfaced them, and we can now select the files that we want it to look at, and then it will go forward with the prompt after that. So that helps with your multi-step editing as you're working through things with Excel. Now, I promised you an example of working with Copilot, Edit with Copilot in the Excel space. So a little while ago, I tasked Copilot with assisting me with what is a very large Excel spreadsheet. Inside of this Excel spreadsheet, it has an underlying data model with Power Queries. So it's quite a complex spreadsheet, and it's got that big data model. Now, the data model is pulling information in from 9 different sheets with approximately 1 million rows each. So think about that. That's a lot of information that's being brought together and collated. And I'm asking Copilot to assist me. I wanted it to come up with some ideas as to how I could produce a report in the space. Now, it's normally something I would do myself, and you do different iterations until you can get it looking right. I wanted to show you how that looked with Copilot because it was quite phenomenal to watch. Now I'm just going to bring up the interactions. I've copied them from my prompt, so it's not the prompt itself anymore, but you can see the information here. So I've told Copilot what it is. I was presenting it with a spreadsheet on duplicates. We wanted to be able to present it in a way that makes it easy for the client to absorb the information inside that very complex spreadsheet. So I gave it the ideas as to what I wanted. And it then came back and it came up with a recommended approach as to how we should lay things out, how it wanted to do the analysis and what the proposed structure was going to be, and then talked me through a couple of different implementation options. And it said, out of these options, I think we should do option A, which is great. So I said, yep, let's do that. It then asked me some questions to help it further. So when you talked about an exact match, what is it specifically that you wanted, and what do you want on your dashboard, and how do you want to do the filtering? So again, I answered all those questions. So this is me answering the questions. It then stepped away and went through actioning the task. And I can see as it's going through the task what each of those different steps is doing. It is such a big spreadsheet that what you think is the best approach may not be the best approach just because of the size of the data. And that's exactly what happened to Copilot as it's going through things. So it was going, great, I'm going to do this. And then it went, oh, actually, given the size of your data set, I'll need to build this in stages. Let me think about how I'm going to do it. And it tried a couple of bits and then it got stuck and it said that's not working for this large spreadsheet, and then tried a different approach. So it's a bit like me doing the spreadsheet on my own. I'd be doing the same thing. It's like, okay, this is best pathway. Oh, that's not going to work for this particular range of information, and then you try something out. Now, it did take a while for it to work this through because it was a complex task that I was giving Copilot to do. So it was probably about 20 minutes worth of work that Copilot did. All of the different steps are listed here. It hit things, it made changes. Excel froze on Copilot, but it still knew that it could work with it. So it waited till the freeze had finished and then it got back to work again. And then once it had finished, it said, I've done it. Here's what I've done. And it's told me exactly what it's created. So it's in my existing spreadsheet, created 3 new sheets. It's told me what those sheets are. And then it's talking me through how to use this new aspect inside of my spreadsheet. Tells me what I now have in my spreadsheet, what the new columns were that it added in to make everything work, because that's important from my perspective. What did you change? And I now have something ready to go. Now, I've grabbed a couple of screenshots of how that looks. This is the final report page of what it pulled out, and it did all the layout. It's put its own criteria into these spaces. Yes, sorry, we've got some bits blurred out, but for the rest of it, you can see what it's doing there. It's even got the potential storage savings listed in here as well. And under each of these numbers are some quite complex formulas or functions. So I've given an example here, a screenshot of one of the functions that it put together to make these numbers work. And it's done all of that on its own. Now, just because it can do this doesn't mean that you go, oh, it's great, it's done everything I want. You still need to go in and check the work that it's done. Just like when we put our prompt in and an answer comes back, it is your responsibility to make sure that everything works. But it is a great place to start. And putting something like this together would have taken me a lot longer than 20 minutes of Copilot doing the work. And also, as part of it, you can see down the bottom here the tabs that have been created. So the first 4 tabs are my own tabs, and the last 3 are Copilot created tabs. And as part of it, it's created a tab with information about what the different classifications are, what the tips are for getting the duplicates cleaned up, and so on. So it's guiding people through the process on how to use it. It then, in the last tab, has all of the different files that are in here and criteria as to how we can pull the different duplicates out of there, which is what's been explained in that earlier spreadsheet. So really awesome tool that has come through. So I encourage you to give it a go in the sorts of work that you may be doing with Copilot. Right, next we'll go into meetings with Copilot. A couple of changes in the meeting space. If you are using the meeting recaps, which I'm sure most of you will be using now, we now have the ability, and we have for a couple of months now, had the ability to customize how that recap looks. So you would be normally going to this AI summary, and it will give you the standard recap that comes back with the notes and the action tasks at the bottom. But you can create your own template that Copilot will then adhere to. And you can have different templates for different types of meetings. So you might, for example, have one for executives to give them concise insights, or you might be wanting to have a more detailed template for the project managers who need lots more detail. So you build the template to your own requirements. Oh, I missed a button. My apologies. So if you're wanting to create your own template, there is a Create Template button when you click on the Custom Summary space. Microsoft have created 2 templates for us already, a speaker summary and an executive report. So you can look at those and get ideas from those. It's a great place to start. But once you're ready, go into that Create a Template. It opens up the space here. And in this box is where we are building out what sort of information we want to have inside of our particular template. And it will then give you a preview on the right-hand side with your actual meeting notes converted before you save this particular template. Once you're happy with it, we click Save and Apply, and it's then available for all future meetings going forward. So that's a nice wee add-in. Also, in the topic of sharing recaps themselves, we now have the ability to share the recaps in an email summary. So most of us are frustrated at the moment with being able to share a recap with external parties. We can't do that. So what we've been doing is copying the information out of the recap and pasting it into an email ourselves. We can now, from the meeting recap, do a share, and it will recognise who all the attendees are in the meeting and put those into the email as well. So when you're in the recap, so you can see I've got recap selected here, you go to the share button and there is an option to click on share to email. And that will then open up an email with all of the attendees showing in the recipient line. Your notes are all showing, and that email will be sent coming from you. Now, there's a couple of things to be aware of here. This can be initiated by organisers, co-organisers, and presenters. So that's something that you just need to be aware of. And there's a couple of things where it won't be available. First, of course, is if you haven't recorded or transcribed the meeting, then you're not going to be able to do it. If you're using sensitivity labels and they're set to confidentiality options, that's not going to work either. So just be aware of that. All right, moving on to the next one. Also in the recap space, we have the ability to do a video recap of our meeting recording, which you might be thinking, why on earth would I want to do that? It actually is quite a nice wee tool to be using. There is an audio option there as well, if you prefer the audio option, and it works similarly. But with the video recap, what it does is it takes your entire meeting, so let's say you met for an hour, and it will then condense the information from that meeting and present it like it's a blog or a vlog. And it'll start with this meeting was put together for this particular reason, and here are the topics that were covered. Let's look into some of the key details. Anna-Marika presented this, Ian presented that, and as it's showing you the video, it's bringing up the relevant video material. So if the screen was shared, it's showing you the information that was showed on the screen that's relevant to the topic, and it actually tied the two bits in together, which is really great. It works for any of your meeting recordings that are longer than 10 minutes. So don't bother trying if it was shorter than 10 minutes, but anything longer than 10, you could give that a go. So a nice wee tool to add in. And this is how it looks. So you do this inside of your chat space, or you can click that video button when you're in recap. So it will work from both places. All right. Now this one is a feature that's not quite live yet. It is supposed to be coming live this month, but we've got a couple of people that have asked us to talk to it. So hence why I've got this one in here, even though it's not live. This is that we are now able to use Copilot chat in shared and delegate mailboxes. So if you are an individual that is managing a mailbox on behalf of somebody else as a delegate, or maybe you've got a shared mailbox that is shared across a team of people working in this space, you can be using Copilot to assist you with interactions in that mailbox. Now, it's not live at this moment in time, but there are some features that I can show you that you can use until it comes live. But let's just talk through what we can do here. So we can access the Copilot chat in Outlook directly while working in your shared or delegated mailbox, rather than only being able to do it in your primary mailbox. Copilot features like summary and draft will work in both of those mailboxes, so great add-on there for yourselves. The support includes full access to shared mailboxes as well as the shared folder permissions. So just something to be aware of. Now, in the past, if you were working with the shared or delegated mailboxes, we needed to include mailbox-specific phrases when we prompted Copilot, which I'll show you in just a moment. And so with this new change, you won't need to do that anymore. The Copilot conversation history is saved to the user's primary account rather than into the shared or owner's mailbox space. So you know that if you're interacting with it, it's still personal to you and not going out for others to see. And from a governance perspective, it's still only seeing what you as a user are permission to see. You're not going to be able to see anybody's mailbox who hasn't given you delegate or shared permissions on that mailbox. Now, for those of you that are working in the space and need to be able to interact with Copilot before this feature is live, here are a couple of things that you can do now working in those mailbox spaces. So we can use prompts. It is slightly different between shared and delegate mailbox, hence why I've split those two categories up. So the first is the shared mailbox. You could be doing things like asking it to summarize recent emails in mailbox@domain.com. Make sure you put the word mailbox at the end. That is the trigger to let it know that you're asking it to go into that shared mailbox. So you need to give it the name with the full email address and the word mailbox at the end. You could be asking it to list all the emails around a particular topic from a particular mailbox. In the delegate mailbox, it might be that you want to summarize, and you can see that the wording is slightly different with the delegate. This time we're just using the person's name rather than the email address, but we still need to use the word mailbox. Then we have the option of doing things like list of recent emails about a particular product using the person's name, or you can use their context IQ. Remember, that was the first screen I showed you today. So if you use your backslash and use the name coming out of the context IQ, that will work as well. And I've given you a textual example there of what it would look like with my name in there. That is the calendar side of mailbox side of things. Next, one of the features is scheduling a meeting from an email. Now, that has been available for a while, but it is now available in Classic Outlook. To do it, open up your email, and then on the right-hand side, click on the three dots, and we can schedule with Copilot. Now, what it will do is it will find available times to meet, book meeting rooms, draft agendas, and send the invite. Now, sadly, it's not as good as working in the new Outlook. The new Outlook is much better and interacts nicer with us. So if you find this one cumbersome, then just go to using that new Outlook. I think I've shown most people that I have both the new and the classic Outlook open at the same time, and I choose which one I use depending on what it is that I'm trying to do. Just as a reminder, if you haven't done this before, scheduling a meeting from an email inside the new Outlook, you go to your email, click on the three dots in the ribbon, and in the ribbon you'll see an option there to schedule with Copilot. And what it then does, and now just be aware it might be hidden. You might have to add that button as a customize, but once it's there, it will stay there. This is what you will see. So it will put all the names from the email into the recipient line. It will choose an appropriate topic for the subject, and it will come up with an agenda. It puts in any attachments as it's needed and a summarization in there. So that's quite a handy wee tool there as well. Now, this one's one of the biggies that's just come through, and it's Copilot Cowork. Now, Copilot Cowork, because we haven't got enough co's in our vocabulary with Microsoft. A bit of the background of what this one's all about. It started with Anthropic. They have Claude Cowork, which is task-based. It handles multitask and it can work autonomously and executes the tasks on your behalf. And Microsoft went, that looks really good. Let's get that into our ecosystem. So they've brought the Claude technology into the Microsoft space. And we now have that available to us under the heading Copilot Cowork. Now, Copilot Cowork does everything that Claude Cowork does. The difference, though, is that it lives in your tenant. So it's the same with your standard Copilot. It's obeying all of your security settings like Copilot does. When you task it to do something, you leave it to do the task and it carries on working, and you can keep doing things, and when it's ready, it will let you know that it's done. Now, you can even turn your computer off while it's doing that work. We've just found out this is one of the major changes that came through, that it's now available on your phone as well. So you could kick it off if you're at a meeting somewhere on your phone, let it be working on things, and then when you come back to your desk at work, open it up and you'll be able to see that it's either finished or is still finishing off the last stages of work for you. Now, what can Copilot Cowork do? It's a shift from having thinking of Copilot as an assistant to having Copilot as a co-worker. So with the assistant, we'd say, here's the first thing I want you to do, and they'd come back and go, yep, here's the answer to that. Then you give them the next thing and they come back with that. With co-worker, you're giving them a step-by-step, you're giving Copilot a step-by-step process of what you want done. It's also task-based, so it's not just returning prompts, but you can be asking it to do things. Now, it can do multiple actions and create multiple documents, so it's pretty skilled. We can also give it skills, so we can teach it how it should behave when we're asking it to do certain tasks. So that's another one of the new features that's come out with the Copilot Cowork. You do have to be a frontier organisation for this to work. So it's still, if you like, in that preview stage, but it is working. So go and have a play if you have access to that. It, again, is quite powerful in what it can do. You can also ask it to do more things while it's still working on the initial task. So, and it will then adjust its working to the things you're asking it to make changes on. Now, this was a really basic example where I asked it to look at my emails, chats, meetings, and files and summarise what work I've been involved in with the Smart DMS projects. When it's done that, I want it to present findings in a table inside of Word. Once it knows what it has to do, it will go away and think things through. And on the right-hand side, it plans out the steps. So you can see those steps and you can see its completion as it's going through. If I provided any inputs, they would be shown in the input folder. Any outputs would show in the output folder. So it created the Word document for me with the table and it's put it into the output folder. And it tells me what skills it was using. So in this particular one, it only needed Word, but you might be asking it to do something that requires Word and Excel plus some custom skills that you've asked it to work on, and it will bring all of those into the mix. Now, you can make it more complicated. It might be that you've got a really complicated report that you want it to summarize. Once it's summarized it, you want to put into a Word document. You need a spreadsheet created, and then once all of that's done, you'd like it to be packaged up into an email for your colleagues to have a look at. You might be saying, send it to all my direct reports. It would know who your direct reports are and go and find those direct reports. So it then creates a Word document, an Excel document, creates your email, addresses it, and actually sends the email if you ask it to send the email as well. So it can do some pretty complex steps. This is what it came back with for me on the Word document. I didn't tell it how to lay it out. It came up with its own ideas as to how to lay it out. But obviously, if you need it in a specific layout, you can do so. Now, we are hitting close to end time and there are so many different updates. So I'm going to press pause on that. We do catch-ups with clients as well on what updates are. So if you're wanting to know more, get in touch with us and we can do some more. But as a sneak peek, I'll just bring up this researcher agency and I'll put that screen up. Researcher Agent has been updated. For those of you that are using Researcher Agent, you can now specify how you want the output to look, and you can choose between a PowerPoint, a PDF, an infographic. The infographics are pretty cool, or an audio overview to be sending to someone. And you can see those buttons are here under the prompt, and have a look at how it's displaying things now. It looks a lot cleaner than it was when we originally got our Researcher Agent. And with that, we draw our updates to a conclusion.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. There's obviously so much content. I think what's interesting is the use cases around the custom outputs from Teams meetings. I think that's like a hot topic that everybody's using Teams to record their, transcribe all their meetings. But the actual transcript sometimes is not actually that useful. It's actually how it outputs the transcript into different scenarios. So I use that one quite heavily. I think that's a really cool feature. So I use it through different outputs, like if I'm having a sales call, then I want to have a sales summary that has everything that we discussed in that sales call, but we can use it for internal outputs as well. So we have a project recap, or we're just reviewing what's happening on a project. So that's like Anna-Marika and I talking about one of her projects. Then I can output that as well, and that gives me some notes that I can put into our project plans and things like that. So there's some really cool use cases for that. I think the only thing that really frustrates me just a little bit is that it doesn't automatically record all of my Teams meetings when I'm joining clients' Teams meetings. And so then I have to ask for the transcript, and then I have to figure it out for myself, because it's not now my custom output. So I actually have to have both. So I have a custom output from my Teams meetings, and I have an agent then that takes somebody else's transcript and gives me the same output. So we end up having to double up the workload a little bit, but you can still use those agents if you're going to take that pathway to do something from your like Zoom meetings or third-party products and stuff like that. So anyway,
I'm
yeah,
just
really
going to slip
exciting.
one more slide in, because I think this one might be useful for people to see as well, that there are some new widgets available on your phone to access Copilot faster as well, and that's both on iOS and Android.
Next up is my session, actually, Anna-Marika, if you don't mind bringing that back up again. So we're talking about this concept about functional SharePoint libraries. So that's the 17th of June, same time, same place. All right. Well, with that, thanks very much for everyone for joining. Thanks, Anna-Marika, for gathering all that intel. Good sharing.
Everyone for coming along, and look forward to sharing more in the future.
Brilliant. Catch you all next time. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.